We're live and good to go, Eric.
You are.
Good morning. This is the June meeting, June the 7th, 2021 of the Old Town Verne Business Improvement District Board. And as before, we are meeting on Zoom. And if you have any comments for the meeting, you can email them to planning, planning at cityoflaverne.org. And you can, obviously, you're watching this on YouTube if you're seeing this. And go ahead and submit any questions or comments if you have them. We'll go ahead and get started. Eric, can you call the roll?
Sure. Alternate Franco is not on the call at this time. Board Member Forgy.
Here.
Board Member Ream. Board Member Miller.
Here.
Board Member Stark. And Chair Walters.
Here. Thank you. Anything in the calendar you'd like to call out?
Yes, I would. Just as a reminder, this evening is the annual protest hearing for the district at tonight's city council meeting. So Chair Walters and myself will be presenting that item to the council tonight. Also on the agenda tonight under consent is the reappointments of board member of Chair Walters, board members Stark and Ream for another 2-year period. Trying to catch up and make sure we do these reappointments basically every 2 years. So next year, board member Forgy and board member Miller and board member and alternate Franco will be renewed for another 2 years as well. So there's a alternating schedule 3 and 3 basically. So that'll become an automatic during the same meeting as the annual protest hearing. But I did want to point out in doing my research for that, I wanted to commend Chair Walters. He might not know this, but he is now in his 25th year of serving this board. So I'm going to give him a little credit tonight too. So this is a little warning for you, Craig. But yeah, 1996 January is when you began your service to the board. So thank you.
And I think I was only appointed one time. So you get appointed, you can't ever leave. But, yeah, I was only 13 the first time I was. Amazing. Thank you, Eric. We have minutes from May 3rd. Do we have a motion to approve or do we have any amendments?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Jason and Mickey second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Moving on to new business. Eric, election of officers.
Yeah, also as another cleanup, we do need to have these positions are outlined in the municipal code for positions on the board. As I mentioned in my email to you, the role of the chair obviously is to kind of coordinate and run this meeting. The vice chair basically would step in the absence of the chair. Secretary and treasurer are a little bit less responsibilities. Obviously, the treasurer would be involved with the annual budget information. As we take, at one point, the board was responsible for taking their own minutes and putting the agenda together and everything else. The city has gradually taken that over. And so we now do that. There's no plans to change that, but we do need a secretary as well appointed to the board or one of the board members to be designated as the secretary. So just doing some cleanup here, and I'd like to try to get those roles filled officially today if possible.
Well, I would nominate Mickey as vice chair. And while I'm at it, Marianne has been serving as treasurer for the association. I thought she was appointed treasurer for the district as well, but if not, nominate her. And Matt, would you be willing to be secretary position?
Yeah, yes.
So any other nominations for those? If not, second would be in order.
A second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
That was easy. Thank you very much. And just for the record, the code does call this to be done at the first meeting of every calendar year. So we will redo this in January. No reason that any of those positions need to change, but we will take an action again in January.
Very good. Big responsibilities. And the positions carry over to the association, the nonprofit as well. So in that case, I didn't tell you that in advance, Matt, but in that case, the secretary does actually need to take notes on those occasions that we have meetings there. And then since the city handles our finances for the district, there's nothing treasurer-wise on this side, but on the association side, Mary Ann manages the bank. Okay, moving on. Annual report.
Yeah, so I decided it would probably be appropriate to attach this report. This is the report that will be going to the council tonight. There's nothing that the board needs to do. This is something I prepare for the council and that Craig and I basically present. So I just wanted to put it on your agenda since we happen to fall on the same day as the council meeting this evening, just so you had it in front of you and we're aware of what's going to be presented at the council meeting tonight. But so it's really informational.
I think that's good. Nice and concise. Any comments on that or the budget that is attached to that? If not, we will move on then. Proposal for a craft fair.
Yes, I am bringing in resident Carmel Plotkin. Carmel, if you're there, you can unmute yourself and turn your video on, please. And we have a PowerPoint presentation to share with you today as well.
Hello.
You there, Carmel?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Welcome.
Go ahead and introduce yourself, Carmel, while I bring this up, please.
Hi, my name is Carmel Plotkin. I'm a resident here of Laverne for basically my entire life. I went to Bonita High, graduated from the University of Laverne with my degree in organizational management, and I this last year started my own business from home.
Very good. Well, we're happy to have you here. My name's Craig Walters. I'm the chair of the district. And could the rest of you introduce yourself and what association you're with?
Hi, Carmel. It's Mickey. We know each other.
Hey.
I'm Jason Miller with the University of Laverne.
Hi, Carmel. I'm Matt with 3rd Street Wine Shop.
So,
Well, the floor is yours, Carmel. We see your PowerPoint.
okay, so basically I approached Eric to discuss the potential of creating kind of like a craft fair, a little bit aligned with what downtown Claremont does each year. They host theirs once a year. I believe it's in October. So basically it just gives the local artisans an opportunity to feature their products within their own town. So.
You want me to just tell you next slide when you're ready, Carmel?
Sure, next slide. So just a little bit of information about me. I've born and raised in Laverne my entire life. I went to school for design in Los Angeles, and then I continued on to the University of Laverne. I got my degree in organizational management. I'm currently doing designs of handbags and semi-precious, what I call upcycling jewelry. Okay, next slide. So basically what I wanted to do is to bring back some kind of fair where it's local. So basically about a year and a half ago, I left my career in healthcare I was in there for about 10 years. And then I started my own company in 2019, unfortunately. Nobody could have predicted COVID, but we were really hit by COVID. So I didn't have an opportunity to actually open up my shop. So what I wanted to do is to discuss the possibility, next slide, to discuss the possibility of bringing back something to the community that provided not only myself, but other local artisans the opportunity to kind of showcase what they've been working on during COVID. So during COVID, one of the really good things that I've been doing is actually really connecting with people in my community that are doing something similar to what I'm doing, in that they're, working from home, making their own, be it pots or plants or macrame or jewelry or, even just art. And I've been talking to them and just asking them, like, how are you going to feature your items? Is it just going to be online? And a lot of people are looking for something like this, in that they're looking for an opportunity to be able to showcase their items in an open air mart. So I've been looking online, and there's a website called Etsy. Next slide. There's a website called Etsy that basically does that. They bring in local artisans, and a lot of it is in Orange County and Los Angeles, but there's nothing like that in our area, except in downtown Claremont that they do in October, and they're going to be doing it this year. So what I want to do is to, give Laverne the opportunity to really showcase, like, not only our downtown area, but to really feature our local artisans and what, people like me are doing in their own home. So what I'm proposing is that we open up something where it's either in downtown, like on 3rd Street, in between, I would say, Cafe Allegro and right before the fire station, maybe shutting like that part down to feature the local artisans, or maybe doing something with University of Laverne, or maybe even like the Bonita parking lot. But what I would say is maybe we can approach local artisans and give them a spot. So basically what they would do is register, and then with that registration fee, we could potentially pay for like any sort of cleanup that would be associated with that. Then each local artisan would have to bring their own pop-up tent, their own table, displays for sale. Next slide, please. So I would propose it in this potential area as marked. And we could have like restaurants that open, kind of like the wine walk, where we also feature the local shops and restaurants. Next slide. So basically what we do in order to market it, we would have each artisan basically approach their customer base. So either on Instagram, we could do like the Nextdoor app, or Facebook to market it. And then maybe we could also ask some of the local stores to kind of feature posters that showed the craft fair information. Next slide.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Any questions?
Carmel, are you proposing this be once a year or more regular than that?
I would propose doing it twice a year. I think it would be really good to do it in like spring and fall. So I know Claremont only does theirs in October, and it's very successful. I mean, in Claremont is like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 blocks long. It's huge. But I would suggest doing it twice a year, because I think artisans, have like a spring and a fall, something that would appeal to both seasons.
Very good.
And I know in the past we've done the outdoor markets, but it seems like, because I've been a resident here so long, it seems like a lot of that was a lot of items that you could buy overseas. So what I would want to focus on is something that's, handmade, something that's like we've curated, something very special that represents, not only the residents here, but to make it appeal to everybody.
Other questions or comments for Carmel? And welcome, Marianne. Are you driving somewhere? Hands free?
We're just coming back. We're down at UCI, so I'm in the car.
So any questions?
Would
Oh,
this?
I have a
would this-
question. Oh,
Sorry, Mickey. Would this be entirely self-promoted and like self-organized, or are you looking at partnering with a group? Like, I know there's a Jackalope Fair that rotates around, or would this just be entirely on you or on the organizer?
I mean, I would completely be willing to organize it from beginning to end. I think a lot of those street fairs that have companies behind them bring in a lot of like I said, overseas items. They're not handmade. It's not, I've discussed actually with City of Claremont. their organizer and how they do their fair. And it's all hand selected and they don't bring in an outside vendor. I think, and like I said, I would be completely willing to take the ball and run with it and organize it from beginning to end.
Nikki?
I just had a couple questions. For one, when we have like the car show will give a local, a downtown business a free booth. So would you be offering that?
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
then the other thing is, a lot of the restaurants don't really like food downtown because that's where they get, people come downtown, they shop, and then they're going to go into the restaurant. So is there going to be any restrictions as to what type of businesses besides overseas could participate?
Yeah, I don't think we should bring in any sort of food at all. I think we should completely and fully support the local restaurants. So I don't think any food. I think it would be nice to have some music there. I think it'd be really great to bring in some kind of like open mic thing. My daughter just graduated from Benita and she was in choir and drama, and they didn't have the opportunity to do anything before they graduated. I think it'd be great to bring in like some kids and do a little bit of like open mic for some kind of entertainment, maybe something like that. But yeah,
And do you have, what dates are you thinking of?
I think maybe July, something like that, something mid to end July.
And then just have you talked to the police department about closing the street? Because isn't that who would be the one that would decide if we could close the street? And in July, I believe the restaurants will still be outside. So then would it go up D Street?
I would propose on 3rd Street like they used to do during the outdoor market that we used to have. They used to close. It was like a T kind of like where all the restaurants were here, and then they closed 3rd Street. That's where they had like the food. So I'd propose 3rd Street from Cafe Allegro to right before the fire station.
So I did talk briefly with Carmel about this, and the street closures are definitely more difficult. We need to make sure that those are done safely to protect the participants. And so when you close the entire intersection, it actually is a lot more complicated than what we have closed today, because now we have to reroute traffic in 4 different directions versus just 2. And so how that works, and we have to barricade 4 different intersections, right? And the associated driveways, et cetera, that are also part of that. So my personal recommendation is to maybe look at either the university's lot or the city's lot along Bonita Avenue, where it's much easier to close and secure. It won't take the effort, the expenses, because closing the streets are going to be expenses that you would have to come up with, Carmel, to pay for. And those have to get inspected and everything else. Where if we're in a parking lot, it's going to be much simpler and easier to do. So if there was a parking lot that met your needs in terms of visibility, again, Bonita makes most sense to me. That I think is probably a good starting out point. And then if you grow and you find that you think you could be successful on the streets and you want to go that route, then we could look at that. But to start this up, I would suggest personally that you look at one of the parking lots.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Jason, if they do it in July, would we be able to use the ULB parking lot right there for just that one day?
I believe so. We're slowly bringing people back to campus, but we don't start until the end of August. So July is a good time.
So would that be an option, Eric? Would be to use that one parking lot there that we are using for public parking for the time being, but for the day?
Yeah, like I said, either of them probably would work, the city's own parking lot or that one, depending on, how those conversations could go with the university. But it's a special event permit. So just looking to submit a permit to the city. We would coordinate that with police department, fire department, public works to make sure that they all signed off on it before the event. But that's basically how we would process this as a one-time deal for now, I would suggest. And then if this wants to become an ongoing thing, we could still look at that. The car shows, for example, get a special event permit from the city every time they do it. So it'd be the same thing.
Historically, we've had kind of a mixed results with the various street fairs we've had and farmers market. We've never tried though. I mean, way back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we used to do occasional craft fairs, and those generally didn't do that well. And they weren't specifically like you're talking about with the handmade vendors. It was kind of a mix, and they were not super successful. But obviously, Village Venture in Claremont is huge and extremely successful. It's good not only for the vendors, but for the businesses. It's a great day. And, it maybe that model of a couple times a year with a very special vendor base, I think, maybe that's worth a try. I would agree with what Eric said as far as closing the streets. That becomes much more complicated. Personally, I think if it worked to do the university lot, especially before they reopen, or an initial one, I think that would be better. And it's just more connected to the businesses in Old Town, and especially getting, if you're interested in getting the district to assist in some way or become somehow partnered in this to help. I think that would be a closer connection. However, Benite Avenue has a lot more visibility for traffic, and we wouldn't have the issue of the parking lot not being available perhaps during the school year for ULV. So a lot of things to think about. July might be a little quick to honestly to get this pulled together, but if you've got time and energy to do that, you might be able to put that together. For sure, trying to do it on the street would slow it down more. So,
Okay.
In general, is there a general feeling that we'd want to be supportive of Carmel taking this to the next step?
I think it's worth a try. I mean, if we do it in July, we have a little more options in the parking lots for the time being. We just see how it might work, and then we can proceed from there.
I think it's great to try and see if we can get people to Laverne and to showcase some local artists. I just, going off of what Nikki was asking earlier, I think having kind of a specific set of criteria or who can be a vendor and who can't. Carmel, you said no food. Does that mean like you can't sell honey or baked goods? Or
Yeah, I would say like prepackaged items would be approved, things like that. I mean, I'd have to look into, I don't know, what is the liability for something like that? Does it fall strictly on the artisan? Does it fall on, I'm sure it wouldn't fall on the city. I would imagine that each artisan can represent themselves and take on their own liability if there was anything associated with their product. But yeah, I would not have any food that was there for consumption. Like I would want to appeal to the restaurants. I would want,
Yeah, I think for our car shows, I think in the past we said no hot food. Does that sound right?
It's really no food that competes with other food that's currently served downtown, basically. So like a popcorn vendor would be okay, for example.
But a spaghetti vendor would not.
Right.
Right. And we've had that almond vendor, the cinnamon almonds. They come to the car show. So
Carmel, I would. So what typically happens is you, as the organizer, would have to provide insurance to the city for the whole event. So then you would have to have individual policies or sign-offs from your vendors to you, because you would have to, one person would have to be the overall insurer, because you'll have to name the city as additional insured. So that's something you probably want to start investigating right away, because that's something you'll probably have to purchase in order to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely, and like I said, I've been in communication with the individual that organizes the Village Venture, so I'm imagining that it would be something similar
Right.
to what they have to do.
Great. And then Eric would be your contact. Our next meeting will be a month from now. Do you have the date for our next meeting, Eric?
Yeah, it's July 12th, actually, because the Monday is the legal holiday for the 4th of July, as it falls on Sunday. So your meeting will be on Monday, July 12th. So, if you're looking to do July, that's probably too late for, waiting to get answers. So if you still want to stick with July, Carmel, I'd suggest you and I touch base after this, and I'll get you the paperwork so you can start understanding what the insurance requirements are. If you're going to look at the university's parking lots, I'm sure they're going to require some kind of insurance as well, or at least named as additionally insured, right? So Jason will be your contact for that as well. I can provide you with his email later today.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Well, good luck, and keep us posted.
Thank you.
I'm sure the businesses would be very happy to help promote it. Mickey is our social media coordinator, and so she has access to all of our Facebook, Instagram, etc., and promote stuff like this. So good luck.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the Cool Cruise update.
Well, I was hoping to have some updates for you, but I've not received a word back from Craig Hosel on where he's at. I mean, I suspect that everything's fine, but obviously it appears that that event, potentially with mask requirement, could still occur in September for sure. It seems like there'd be no reason why it shouldn't be able to. So I reached out to him last week and I haven't heard back from him. So I'll try to circle back with him again, and I'll provide the board with an email update once I know more, maybe where his registration numbers are at. But I suspect everything's going smoothly as past car shows have. So September 11th is the date.
Very good. All right, D Street closure update. And we do have a couple of letters that were received.
Yeah, so last month we had this discussion on D Street and the potential for maybe reopening it as soon as this month, once the June 15th new rules or removal of the restrictions basically occurred. We didn't know then quite as much as what we know today, in terms of that there really doesn't look like there's going to be any restrictions on restaurants in terms of inside seating. The governor did announce that they are extending the outdoor serving of alcohol through the rest of the calendar year. So that's in place through December 31st. So that's not going away. But as you'll recall, the board voted last month to extend it potentially through the end of summer, once to align with the university's reopening. We had talked about bringing it back today, as obviously this will be a discussion item at tonight's city council meeting as well. So we wanted basically to talk to the board again to make sure you still want to stick with the schedule of keeping the street closed to the end of summer, knowing now what we know about no indoor restrictions for restaurants, but also the expanded outdoor serving of alcohol through the rest of the year by the state. And then we had two different emails last week with concerns and requests to reopen the street now. And as you recall, we had a letter requesting that last meeting. We had a petition with signatures to keep it closed. We had businesses that were fine with it reopening. We had businesses that wanted it to stay closed. So all over the place, really. And that was your discussion last month. So just wanted to bring it back to you before tonight's council meeting, so I can give them an update of where the board stands.
Just before we actually started the meeting, Mickey had made a comment also about the trash situation. You want to reiterate that, Mickey?
I know one of the complaints was the trash. My husband and I did take a walk last night. I think it was between 6 and 7, and the trash can that's kind of in front of Argo was overflowing. The one across the street from that, which would be maybe kind of in front of Frank's, was full but not overflowing. So I know that we reached out to the restaurants earlier saying, you know, on Sundays, you guys need to take care of your trash cans. Obviously, I don't think that's being done. So I think my only concern would be that that should be something that should be done. And we need to reiterate that to the restaurants whose the trash can is in front of their store. I mean, you know, it doesn't take much to empty a trash can, but so it did look pretty bad. Now, in one of those letters, it said that we had homeless people sleeping in under the tents. Has anybody seen that? I have not seen that at all. I just wondered if that was a true statement. Does anybody know anything about that?
I'm not down there that late at night, but how late are the restaurants open till, Eric?
It depends on what day and what restaurants, but some can be open usually on the weekends till 11 midnight.
Okay, so if they're down there and they're sleeping in the tents, the police would probably know about it. I would, that's my opinion, because they're right there. So,
I checked with our police chief, and we have not received any calls of homeless sleeping under the tents, nor have they had calls for drunken, disorderly conduct within the street area. There's been other calls elsewhere, but they haven't had any calls for service for the downtown street closure area. So I confirmed on his side that we have not been receiving those calls.
And then Eric, the city.
and I haven't seen, we were seeing profit up on Bonita issues over there. It's been cleaner than it has in a long, long time. So in front of our building, we're okay. And the parking lot right next to us has been okay.
Eric, the city public works, they're taking care of trash on Saturday. Is somebody doing that?
I don't know for certain. I know we have a limited crew on Saturdays at work. We don't have anybody on Sundays. Whether or not their responsibilities include emptying the trash cans downtown, I don't know. They have a lot of things that they're supposed to be doing around the entire city on Saturdays. When initially when this was brought up, I was told they weren't certain that they were going to be able to do the trash pickup on Saturdays. Whether they are or not, I don't know.
Well, if it was overflowing, chances are it didn't get picked up Saturday.
Agreed.
So before we go too deep on that, are there any changes in opinion? Last month we left it that we'd recommend leaving the street closed until we need to clear it out before school starts. And that date again, Jason, when your classes begin? What is the date your classes begin?
Sorry, I'm just looking that up real quick. It's in last week of August, which is August 23rd.
And
Which
that's
is a Monday.
Monday.
So, which would mean that we would have to reopen the street the week before, probably that Thursday before the Monday. One other thing I will bring up is that the Gold Lines construction is expected to close down the D Street crossing at the beginning of August. So we're looking at that. It might make sense to maybe align the reopening of D Street with the closure of the crossing at the same time. So we're talking about probably a 2-week window, right, that we might be reopening. Our traffic engineer is looking at it to see if there's a reason specifically why we might want to do that or not. The main reason that we know at this point is that the detour signs will have to be reconfigured after being set up once the D Street reopens in a week or two. So we are looking at that. I want to make the board aware that we might come back with a reopening slightly sooner just to align with the closure of the railroad tracks at D Street for that reason.
Then of course, the other factor that that really is the main factor in my mind is that the reopening to 100% capacity doors for the restaurants actually take place after June 15th. And, you know, they'd be back to where they were before the pandemic. So based on those situations, the reopening of capacity and the reopening of the university, are we still feeling that we want to recommend to keep it closed until sometime in early to mid-August?
I personally would like to see it because I think it would allow the restaurants to recapture some of their revenue that they've lost in the last year. And even if we could just give them 6 more weeks past the opening on the 15th, that's better than nothing. So
I agree. The only thing that I would think is, let's just keep an eye on it. I mean, our next meeting is July 12th. And if, people aren't sitting outside because it's so hot, well, then maybe on July 12th, we say, okay, let's open pretty much, now or in a week or whatever. So beginning of August, I would say maybe mid-July to the beginning of August, depending on the heat and what's happening in the street. But I agree, we should probably coincide with the closure by the train tracks. Kind of makes sense just to do it all at once, if not earlier.
Now,
I agree with Mickey too. I think opening it up would be great, but obviously leaving it closed will help recapture some of that lost business.
Yeah, I'm still in favor of kind of that mid-August mark. If it shifts a week or two up or down the calendar, I don't think it's a huge issue. I'm up for revisiting it in July, but I also think too much uncertainty isn't great, and it's hard for the restaurants to plan accordingly on D Street. So having kind of a goal date is good.
I would agree with alignment with the street closure. I come through that detour a couple times every day, and there's always people that are just confused as heck because they come over to D Street to get around E, and then they see the street closed ahead, and it's if you're not familiar, it's confusing, and this would make it a little less confusing to have that straight up. The street reopened. So, Eric, if you don't need any further action, I think we're basically holding the course from last month that we'd recommend keeping the street closed until mid to early August, aligning with the street closure if that's determined that's the best approach to take.
Yes.
Contingent on the restaurants being back at 100%.
I have a question about how do we go about exploring the possibility of a permanent closure? Like, can we ask the city to do a report, or is there any process we can go through? I know that we get some letters of concern with having it closed, but overwhelmingly the response I hear from people is that they want the outside seating, and they like having the outdoor space to walk around. So is there any type of exploration we can do around that?
Yeah, I've made mention of this before. Our Public Works Department's already indicated that they would not support a permanent closure of D Street, as it is the main north-south street that connects Bonita to Arrow Highway. So because of that, from a traffic circulation standpoint, they don't feel it's appropriate to have that as a permanent closure.
So there's no chance of looking at that as an option then?
I mean, it could be a topic that could be brought back before the city council, but if their public works director and department and city engineers are saying it's not a good idea, I don't think it's going to go very far. But if the board really wished to push it, we could put it on an agenda and have that discussion with them. But again, you probably have a recommendation against doing it by their professional staff. So, and obviously you do have, that you do have opposition, right? So I think there'd probably be more work to be done with your businesses downtown to try to get more of a consensus on a permanent closure. Because I don't know how many of the restaurants even are interested in doing that. I know that this has been important for them, but for them to have to staff it and clean it, and we probably would look for more permanent type coverings, right? Patio covers, et cetera, except not the easy up tents, and more of a consistent design, which is going to be some kind of significant investments for the businesses themselves. And whether or not it would be what they would desire, I don't know the answer to that.
Eric, what about what we've discussed in the past of the carve-outs in a couple of parking spaces, and possibly that even being a permanent situation or in a few spots?
As you know, that we kind of provided that to our survey to the restaurants last month, and we received like mixed results, that only half of them roughly would be interested in even pursuing that for a short time, let alone permanently. Again, the short time version might be just some temporary barricades and continued use of easy ups or umbrellas, whereas a permanent thing would be raised curbs. The drainage would have to be figured out, and then permanent railings, etc. That is going to be more investment that the city at this point isn't considering. So that'd be kind of up to those businesses and where they would stand, knowing what those costs might be for a permanent carve out. They might not be interested either, especially now with the alcohol sales only continued through the end of the year. If that goes away at the end of the year, then that's a whole other process. They've got to go back through a conditional use permit, public hearings to be able to serve out there after the state takes away that order, basically.
And one
I
last,
think where we ended up last time was that it would be up to the restaurants maybe to go on the sidewalk, kind of like they have done at Cafe Allegra. So that's kind of where we ended up last time, I believe.
Yeah, and they could do that. They could have done that before COVID, right? So we had that updated policy for sidewalk dining where every business could do tables along the sidewalks, provided they have the adequate room to be able to do that.
Eric, do you
I
know?
wonder, sorry. I wonder, Eric, if we could, is there like a policy or form or whatever that the restaurants, we could supply to the restaurant, so if they decide they want to do that, they could pursue it?
Yeah. So it is a policy that the city established prior to this. Every business basically gets 2 tables and 4 chairs, I think it is, automatically, and then anything more than that will require an agreement with the city. They'll have to pay a lease amount based on the square footage of the sidewalk that they're utilizing. If they want to serve alcohol, they'll have to comply with the ABC and extend their CEP. Again, this is all stuff prior to the current relaxation of those rules, right? So through December 31st, that won't be required. But the sidewalk expansion basically area would after the street basically reopens.
Good. Any further action needed, Eric? Are you good with?
Nope, we'll make this report to the council this evening. Craig and I will, and see if they have further discussions. The council may decide to do something different, I suppose. I don't think so. I think they're going to align with whatever the board thinks is best at this point. But that's, they do have that authority. Because again, we do want them to make the final decision because this is expected to be permanent, right? The permanent reopening. And so, Matt, at that time, if the board wishes to really want to proceed with having the council consider a permanent closure, that might be the time to do it at their July or August meeting. But they're going to be tasked with making a decision to reopen it or not at some point. For good.
Great.
Very good. So, on Eric, any further city reports?
No, I don't believe so.
Pardon me?
No, I don't believe so.
About can you update everybody on 4th of July?
Yeah, so we are having modified 4th of July parade and a modified 4th of July fireworks show. So the parade will be on Saturday the 3rd, and the fireworks will be on Sunday the 4th. That's traditionally how it works whenever 4th of July falls on Sunday, out of respect to the churches along the parade route. This year, the parade entries are restricted to Laverne residents only. And so with that and a desire to shorten the route based on the safety protocols that are needed, because there are over 10,000 expected visitors, viewers. So the mask mandate is in place for all people watching the parade. And so the police department will be trying to enforce that. So there is expected to be a shorter route that has not been determined yet. So I don't know exactly what that means, but don't expect that it's necessarily going to go on the streets that it always has. And then the 4th of July, the fireworks show, those tickets are limited to Laverne households only. The sale of those tickets for that show for Benita High Stadium. The attendance number is restricted and it's first come, first serve. So any Laverne residents, there's a maximum of 6 tickets per household that wish to go to that will need to get those tickets as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I don't know. They might be on sale now. I don't know the date. If anybody else is aware of that, please fill me in. But I don't know when those tickets are on sale. They might already be.
I think they're doing the country fair as well, right? I saw something about that.
I don't believe so. I think that is not happening.
Okay. And do you know if the church is doing barbecue?
My understanding is the church is not doing the barbecue. It is expected the Boy Scouts will do the pancake breakfast, but I haven't heard a confirmation for that for sure. The only 2 things I can tell you for sure is the parade and the fireworks show.
Very good. Questions for Eric? If not, what's the latest from the university, Jason?
No real new update. We're just continuing to have a phased reopening. We do expect to have new information after the 15th of this month. It looks like OSHA guidelines are going to remain in place for a time being. We will be required to wear a mask and have social distancing. So that will just something that we'll have to work with. But we do anticipate that there will probably be some sunsetting on social distancing that will allow for probably a greater number of occupants in a classroom and more people on campus. So this is all good news because we want more people to return to campus and the surrounding community as well. So we remain hopeful.
Very good. Nikki, any reports or updates?
I don't really have any reports or updates. I do want to know if we're going to put the beer or the wine walk on the calendar. I know we had talked about maybe putting it on the calendar and going from there. Normally the beer walk would be the last weekend of September, which would be the 25th. But I don't know if we would rather do a wine walk versus a beer walk or do a combination, or if we're going to think about doing anything. I mean, I think, Knott's Berry Farm had their berry festival tasting. So I think people are ready. People keep asking. So are we going to do something?
Eric, at this stage, based on what the city's hearing after June 15th, is there anything that would prohibit businesses from having people inside like we did in the past, as long as they're wearing masks?
That's the key, right? And how do you do that with beer and wine drinking and eating? Yeah. So I don't have an answer for you. I don't know. They haven't, given guidance on how having wine walks or beer walks, right? Most of the things that I've seen happening are exclusively outside. So I don't, if you want to plan for an exclusively outside event, I think that would probably be potentially being able to be approved by that point. If you want to do the normal one without, people sitting at tables and chairs and kind of distance out so that the way they're only eating or drinking in certain designated areas, then I don't know. I just simply don't know. As Jason mentioned, OSHA's put out, it looks to be having some guidelines that are definitely more restricted than what everybody's been expecting for businesses, to where you have interaction with the public, right? So same with here at City Hall, even vaccinated people will be required, it looks like, to continue to wear masks for the foreseeable future, even though it's not, that's more restrictive than the federal CDC guidelines, and maybe even more restrictive than what the state order says. but the OSHA, businesses have to follow with OSHA. So it's possible that those restrictions are going to be in place, and how that works with eating and drinking, I don't know.
Okay. Is it your understanding that after June 15th, for events, do you still need to get county health approval?
So it'll be up to the county. Again, those restrictions, all those rules haven't been released yet, so we don't know. I would expect we would still probably make sure, especially on ones that are not as clear cut, such as a wine walk or a beer walk, we definitely would want to consult with the county to see what their opinion would be of it. But until those are released in next week, I don't know.
So it sounds like we need to have a little bit more patience. Eric, after the 15th, if things are looking good, would you or someone be able to check with the county and see if they have any specific insights on a beer wine event?
Sure.
If things are looking like it could happen, and then we can place that on the agenda. Let's put it on the agenda regardless for July. Any further comments or questions? Did we receive any emails?
We did not.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just have one other thing. I was wondering if somebody could take over the tree situation this year. That is my very busiest time of year. And it's really difficult for me to do. And I've done it, I think, for 3 years. And I was wondering if somebody else could take the tree on, ordering it, organizing the decorations, all of that. I mean, I would still do, if we are going to have a holiday stroll, I would still, be behind that, getting the postcards printed if we're going to, do postcards or whatever. But the tree is pretty stressful for me that time of year. So I was wondering if somebody else could take that on.
Why don't we put that on the next agenda as well, Eric? And we can solicit some input. Unless one of you is just raring to go. No? Okay. We'll if there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned until July 12th. And happy 4th of July, everybody. It'll be nice to be outside and see people on the streets. That'll be fun. So we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
See you next time. Thank you.